Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video, and we're talking about soft plastics today. So, soft plastics have been around for quite a while. Now, the start of soft plastics came at around 1949, I believe, when Nick Crane invented the soft plastic worm. And then from there, it kind of spread because people found out that, hey, we could make mold and shape it into different types of lures. And from the plastic worm, it has morphed into an industry that now costs a few $1 billion per year. Okay. And everywhere in the world, you could find soft plastics being used for all types of fish. So, literally, these are the most diverse, the most adaptable, we could say, lures there are. And they are so heavily into localization as well. So you could find probably some lures that are made for the world over, whereas with soft plastics, they get so specific that there are some lures made specifically for one lake and one lake only. Like, take for example, even if it's just a variation of color, they do it. Okay? So soft plastics in general, they're very effective. And for some strange reason, here in the Middle East, quite underutilized. So we're going to talk about soft plastics, and hopefully a lot more people would use them because they are really, really good. Okay? Before we proceed, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe because I make videos like this that explain a lot. So especially for anglers that are just starting out, it's quite helpful. All right, so let's get into it. Now, as you can see here, there's quite a few shapes. I mean, crustacea up here, and then we have some fish, and then we have some here that kind of look like fish, but not really. And these are called profile baits. Okay, so profile baits, they don't really look like fish, but they move like fish. Okay, so you can see that the tail here, it's kind of flat, like this one, right? But when they move, they really move like fish. And the action is quite amazing. And it's actually what drives the fish nuts and just go after it. Now, the obvious disadvantage of the soft plastic is because it is a soft plastic, you tend to, well, not you, but the fish tend to rip through them. So buying a pack sometimes is not enough. But most times it's the difference between catching just a bunch of fish or catching a lot. Okay, and we'll discuss about techniques later when we proceed. Okay, so with soft plastics, there are those that have an integrated weight and hook system, like this one here. And when the tail gets ripped, that's it for the lure. Okay, more than likely you would have caught quite a few of them before it actually happens. Sometimes, if you catch a toothy critter, that's it for that lure. So we have ones that you can just put a jig head onto. Okay, so one of the most common ways to rig it would be with a jig head. And then you have flutter hooks, such as this one from VMC. This is quite big because if I put a small one there, it's very hard to see. So I know this is an extreme example, but better for you to see. Now, the most unique feature about a flutter hook is the fact that you can rig it like this. Okay, there's a bait spring here where you can actually attach the head of the lure. And then once you rig it like this, what you do is actually just bury the point of the hook so that it's hidden. Okay, so you'll see that it goes through weeds and rocks and it's almost snagless. So there are many versions of this, like this one here, and it's perfect for quite a lot of fish, actually, from kingfish to bottom species like grouper. and several trevallies, and I've caught them with something like this. So the most common that you'd most likely find, and they're so common they're even in grocery shops here in the UAE, would be the curly tail. And the curly tail is rigged with a jig head, something like this. So the jig head, you insert it here, and it doesn't matter if it's point down or point up, just as long as it's not sideways. Okay, so when you rig this, what it is this tail twirls somewhat and it swims. And it really looks like a small bait fish. And I believe that the curly tail is probably the easiest lure to use in the world. And it catches a lot of fish. Soft plastics come in different sizes, as you could have seen here. You saw here. Okay, they come in different colors, different weights, and each and every single one of them is highly customizable. So I could rig this with a flutter hook. I could rig this with a jig head. I can actually rig this on a hook with a little bit of a small sinker, or depending on how deep I'm fishing. And some of these actually you could use like bait. This is also the reason why they're called soft baits. So they come in scented and unscented types. You can have really big ones like these, and you can have really small ones. And this is a 1-inch size soft plastic, but believe it or not, some of them even come smaller, like really, really small. So there's a soft plastic for almost all the fish that swim, from really tiny fish for ultralight fishing to something as big as marlin. This is how diverse they are. Now, there are very specialized soft plastics such as these from Storm. This is the Biscay minnow and this is the Biscay shad. So this is kind of like a hybrid wherein the hook is not exposed. And when the fish bites, the hook goes out of the body and hooks them. And now, this is heavy, and this is what makes it unique. This is kind of heavy, and you can cast it a long way. And you can cast it through weeds. You can cast it through rocks, and it won't snag. Okay? Now, this tail is called a paddle tail. So this really swims like a fish. And the thing is, you can see how soft the body is. And when it swims, it really swims like the real thing. So it doesn't only look like the real thing, it moves like the real thing. And there's also this GT 360 shrimp. Now, I have a story for this one. Now, the first ones that I've tried, that was, I believe, a prototype. So I managed to get my hands on some prototypes, and the first time I used them, I rigged. It was a bigger version of this. So I rigged it on a ultralight spinning rod and reel, and we were fishing this shallow area with some friends, and I casted it out towards the sand, put it on the rod holder, and then I helped my friend because he was snagged. And by the time I got back to the rod, I noticed that the line was already moving. And all this was doing was actually just sitting on the bottom the whole time. Okay. And for a while, I asked myself, how the heck could it catch fish when I just casted it out? And then I'm keeping my hand steady, and you can see that it's actually moving. So the technology for some of these soft plastics is that they have really, really soft plastic, but they're still tough. See, I can stretch that out. And they hold. So unless a fish really grabs it and chops it, it's going to survive. Soft plastics technology has come a long way. So yeah, for me, it worked not only once, but actually a few times. You just casted it out, let it sink to the bottom, and just let it stay there. So current, when it hits this lure, it actually moves. See? it just moves. So it looks like a shrimp just chilling on the bottom. And sometimes it's all it takes. There are very specialized soft plastic lures like this 360 GT right here. Now, the Jig Head is not the standard lead, okay? It's plastic, and there's actually some rattles in there. Okay, so this is a 360 GT search bait, and Storm came out with this few years back, and it hit the market with a storm. Pardon the pun. But what it is that when you cast it out and reel it in, and you only reel it in, it not only moves, but it also rattles. And that's from the head. Now, with other soft plastics, you can still insert a soft plastic rattle. And they manufacture that. You can find it on Amazon or eBay, wherever you're at. You put it in the body, and it creates that rattle. Now, there is no right or wrong way to fish soft plastics. There are only better ways. Okay, so like this one. Okay, just a tip for the guys that are very, very skeptical about this. Okay, now casting it out as far as you could, reeling it in slow will already move the tail, especially for paddle tails and curly tails. Okay, the most important thing to remember when you're fishing this is that if you're fishing a shrimp, shrimps don't move fast. Okay, they crawl on the bottom. So when you're using a soft plastic shrimp, you also cast it out and reel it in as slowly as you can to make it look like the real thing. For fish, you make it swim like a fish. So you could have a really fast retrieve to simulate fish that are trying to escape from predators. Or you can reel it in slow, just like a swimming fish, a relaxed fish. Okay? Now, these types, when you see them, okay, these are called jerk baits. And the reason why they're called that is the fact that you use them exactly as their name says it. Okay? So these are soft plastic jerk baits. Irregardless of being rigged with a flutter hook or a jig head, what you do is cast it out as far as you can, let it drop down to the bottom, and then jerk your rod. And this has an amazing action. And if there are fish around, more than likely they'd grab it before you even have a few jerks in. And they are that effective. Soft plastics work everywhere. Whether you're on rocky bottoms, sandy bottoms, or pretty much muddy bottoms, or anywhere. Deep water, shallow water, it doesn't matter, they work. Now, if you're in muddy areas or sandy areas, more than likely, it's probably best to use soft plastics that resemble forage that you can find in the area. Okay? So you have crabs, shrimp, small minnow imitating lures or bait, such as this one. Colors, you could go with natural colored ones. You could go with loud colors such as pink, or something neutral like this gray one. It's really entirely up to you. Now, that looks like it got poured with some nuclear liquid, but in certain instances, especially in clear water, this actually works. Either it's really clear water or when it's murky. Okay, so as you can see here, this one's also kind of bright, but believe it or not, this is probably one of the best colors that I ever used. So it's always good to have a selection of colors that you're confident with, and fish the lures according to how the real equivalents move. You won't see a shrimp zipping at 30 kilometers an hour or 30 kilometers an hour. They kind of move. You can let them hop, with very gentle twitches of your rod, and then that's it. Now, as far as gear for these, if you have ultralight rod and reel, then you can use the tiny ones, and you can see the catches of these things, are the catch that I have from ultralight plastics in my Instagram. I always post them there. And for the shrimp, like these ones, you could use medium tackle. This one you could use it for with your ultralight tackle. It's kind of light, but for stuff like these, this is already around light medium tackle. Okay, spinning rods, bait casting rods, it's really up to your preference. This, I use this for Dorado over at Fujera, and it works so well. Yes, I go through a couple of them or even a pack, for the whole day, but at the times when they're not biting anything else, I throw this out and I score fish. So the whole thing about this soft plastics is quite simple. Okay, now I'll throw a technique for you guys there, because this is something that'll give you confidence for these. Okay, have two rods rigged, one with a soft plastic and one with hard bait. Cast your hard bait, and then you get a strike, you don't catch the fish, reel up as fast as you can, throw a soft plastic, and I guarantee you that a lot of times what happens is that they will grab the soft plastic. Now, if you cast your hard bait the second time, there is a chance that they would bite, but more often than not, that fish is already kind of scared, especially in highly pressured areas. So these things are very good second chance bait. Now, not a lot of people actually see them as that. Soft plastics are great. They work in a multitude of situations, and they're actually a very good confidence builder. Only if you give them a try, though. All right, so yep, go ahead and grab a pack and try them. They work for shore, offshore. I've caught most diverse species ever in one trip, all on soft plastic. And sometimes it's what it takes from having a day of catching fish and going home with nothing or no bites at all. All right, so hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.